viewers, and welcome back to the Tobago Updates morning show, coming to you here live from the Port Mall in Scarborough, Tobago. We just at about 7:11 a.m. this morning, and we get started with our first interview. Mr. Gary Griffith, former Commissioner of Police, joining us online. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Yes, good morning.
Hi. Good morning. Can you hear me
All
okay?
right. Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us here once again. We're diving into, and we're still speaking the budget that would have recently been presented, and and the debate and so on. Certainly coming forward at this time is the consideration that there has been an increase in the allocation to the T.T.P.S. And want to get your perspective. Is that increase sufficient to be able to make the kind of change or dent, bearing in mind the challenges that are very obvious out there in Trinidad and Tobago at this point in relation to crime?
Yeah, sure. Good morning again. Well, there could actually never be enough. There will always be a need and a demand for more. But obviously, because of budget allocations, you have to try to cut and paste and try to do the best with what you have. When I was Commissioner of Police, in fact, at a time during COVID, when the police requirements would have been at its highest, the Minister of Finance, based on only he could think about it, decided to cut the budget allocation for the police service by over $300 million. And that's when we needed the police as much as we ever did since probably 1990. But having said that, the numbers that you get in the budget allocation, it really is it's comical. It is really false and misleading, because what happens is that the releases are never given to the police service. Definitely, I was there as the Commissioner of Police for 3 years, so there will be budget allocation for, say, apart from the salary, 400 million for goods and services. And for the first 6 months, they will not even give it to the police. So as much as they will state what they intend to give, and they actually stated that there's an increase of $95 million, they don't give releases. So it's stating what you intend to put out in the budget, but don't give to the police service. The commissioner is then forced to try to run a business with 7,000 employees, 1,700 police vehicles, 120 buildings without a cent. No releases are given for the first 6 months, and it makes it difficult. That is when the suppliers will now pull back on fuel, electricity, IT, technology, meals for the recruits, uniform, maintenance of the vehicles. It cripples the police service. And I spend half of my time trying to plead with suppliers, do not pull the plug based on the incompetence of the government, putting a budget allocation but not giving releases. And what happens because of that? By after 6 months, they start giving you piece by piece. So if it's 400 million, they say they're going to give you for the year. And at the end of the year, they only give out 280 million. What they then say is that, listen, all you spent was 280 million, so that's all we're going to give you for the following year. So they reduce the budget allocation based on what you spent, but you could only spend based on what was released. So the whole concept of the budget allocation by this government, it is false, is misleading. They deceive the country by claiming what they are going to give when they actually don't do that. As it pertains to the recruiting, this again is totally an embarrassment to Trinidad and Tobago, because what they have done is exactly what I did as the Minister of National Security in 2013 to 2015. I understood that trying to bring in 200 recruits annually, 100 every 6 months, it is not going to get us close to the increased establishment, because we lose 200 odd police officers annually through retirement, death, or whatever. So the only way we could have done that was to move the recruiting outside of the police training academy that could only allocate 100 at a time. I moved it to the Chaguaramas Convention Center, and we had the system. We were 300 odd recruits per batch. It was the closest we had to the established strength. But what happened, because of sheer pettiness by this government, they pulled the plug on that and went back to the academy after I left office as minister. So for 8 or 9 years, they never used the Chaguaramas Convention Center. Now that they've realized the only way it could be done is based on what Gary Griffith would have done 8 years ago, they're trying to reignite it. The unfortunate thing is, what they're not telling the country is to go back to the same Chaguaramas Convention Center that they mentioned. By copying exactly what I did, it is going to cost the taxpayers over $30 million now to refurbish the Chaguaramas Convention Center, because it was ignored for the last 8 years. And that is not even in the allocation. So how can you say that you're going to move to another area to triple the recruiting when you have not allocated for the $30 million to refurbish the same Chaguaramas Convention Center?
Mr. Griffith, we've heard what you said, but what we're looking at right now is that the amount that was allocated to police youth clubs, right? We want to know, what do you think their role is in assisting in curbing crime in our society, and the allocation given to them, is it sufficient, and how would it be used to manage the upsurge of crime in our country?
Yeah, again, the police youth club, that 100 plus, it's a critical element towards reducing crime. Policing is not just about hard targeting, rapid response, patrols, high visibility, arresting. It involves what is known as secondary crime prevention, getting young persons to utilize their energies away from the life of crime. And that definitely shows the importance of the police youth clubs. Having said that, the commissioner of police, they need to think out of the box, which is what I did as commissioner of police. The budget allocation for police youth clubs would have been probably even less, but you would have seen how the police youth club never before seen to such an extent, because we had the commissioners cup, which had hundreds of different teams, uh, thousands upon thousands of young persons utilizing their energies on a sporting field, getting the communities to work together, getting persons in different neighborhoods and so forth to work together to be able to burn their energies on the football field. That was done through a lot of work and dedication through the police sports club, through I support our service, which is bringing the private sector for them to understand the importance of working with the police service. And that is where the private sector comes in. The government can never give enough for a police service, but the private sector, through I support our service, they were able to not just repair vehicles, see about air conditioning units, see about generators, paint the police buildings, provide certain things like papers and photocopying machines for the police stations, but also to assist in the police youth clubs. Unfortunately, that I support our service was also pulled out. And with that, without the input of the private sector, the Tobago Police Service would be cash strapped. And obviously, the youth club will be affected.
I know one of the areas that you delved off into would have been this indication to once again have an increase in terms of larger numbers. What role do you feel SRPs, in terms of Special Reserve Police, can play in terms of this fight against crime, based on they may be immediately available versus what will now be the preparations to increase the police force in terms of moving from that 300 to, I think it is 1,000 for the.
Well, again, the SRPs, people say certain things about the SRPs, but some of the officers closest to me were SRPs. They were very well trained, tactical. Some of them came from the defense force. Some of them were persons who were civilians, and that is why we need to think out of the box. The SRPs that I brought in were persons that may not have been just persons who were tactical, but persons who were competent in different aspects of human resource, finance, logistics, IT, and so you will not have the police officers being so well versed in those fields, but you were able to get civilians who are highly qualified. You made them SRPs, which is done around the world, in all aspects, from forensic testing, fraud, data gathering, intelligence gathering. So you have those individuals who are qualified in those fields that will then work with the trained police officers who know policing, and that is done, and it's because of that type of synergy, making those persons SRPs, which critical towards what you would have seen just 2 years ago, the highest reduction in violent crime in 17 years. Public trust and confidence in the police had moved to 55%, and crime was the number 4 concern behind health, education, and the economy. So the SRPs can play a very critical part. However, the present administration in the police service do not see the importance of hiring civilians, making them SRPs, to have them work alongside the trained police officers. But having said that, I want to again remind the country that the same number of police officers 2 years ago are the same number of police officers now. So the importance is not for us to increase quantity, but to enhance quality. And that is what is not being done. There are no longer systems to measure the performance and make police officers accountable. These were the same police officers that the country loved, admired, respected, believed in, trusted. But if it is you do not put systems to, like, for example, put GPS tracking on the police vehicles, you're not. When last have you seen a police officer on the ground directing traffic? Because we are an operations center, we will be able to pinpoint every traffic congestion, send police officers out. We'll be able to put GPS on the police vehicles, see that they stay in their area of responsibility, so they will not be using the police vehicles for illegal escort services, to transport and to assist in trucks or whatever being escorted, or police vehicles going in the wrong areas to be able to assist in criminal elements to protect them. making sure they stay in their area so that you can get a 5-minute response time. So it was the same number of police officers. Unfortunately, this Prime Minister, he made it known that his concept is to have police stations and to have lots of police officers in stations. So now we've gone back to the old time policing where you have 10 and 12 officers in a station sitting down waiting for people to come to a station to make reports because they pulled the plug on the online reporting and the police app, which was the largest app in the country at the time, where people were giving information to the police, putting reports instead. So what you really need in a station is 1 or 2 officers alone and the rest of the officers out there. That is why you saw such that high visibility, that rapid response. And people complained 2 years ago that they were seeing too many police vehicles, too many blue lights, too many sirens, because we made them accountable. So if that is done, there's not going to be that great demand to increase the established strength to the extra 1,400 that they are presently short of.
Does that mean you're not in support of that 15 million or so allocated in terms of establishing, according to my information, is the Riverine Police Unit, with regards to the Caranach Police Station?
No, not at all. In fact, I was the one who established the Riverine Unit after about 3 decades when it was pulled out. I was the one who established it. The Prime Minister, in fact, actually told me, he actually poked me in my rib when we opened the Caranach Police Station and I introduced the Riverine Unit for the first time after 3 decades in the police service. He said that is what this should have never stopped. And he thanked me for bringing it back. And then he insisted that we need to put it in Tobago. And I said, yes, we already had vessels prepared to get to Tobago to be able to do the proper patrols required because of the virtual absence of some degree of law enforcement in Tobago. So that was set. And for 2 years, they did nothing. They did not provide any allocation for the Marine Unit after I reignited it. I established it over 2 years ago. So what they are doing is just a regurgitation of exactly what I had prepared. And again, this 50 million is not going to be enough to be able to provide the proper system that I had in place to make sure there was a proper Marine unit in the police service for Tobago. So again, it is unfortunate that what they've done in their whole budget allocation, from the recruit intake, the Riverine unit, speaking about community patrols, because they, as I said, they shut down the emergency response patrol, the community comfort patrol we had before, the vetting of the units, we already had that. We were doing polygraph testing. The most elite unit in SWAT was also shut down. The scanners they spoke about, we had 2 mobile scanners. They pulled the plug in and refused to use it. And then the diamond vessels, 2 of which would have gone to Tobago, they left it for 8 years, refused to use it. And those diamond vessels that they spoke about in that budget allocation, I got it as a minister in 2015 at a cost of 1.2 billion less than the 3 OPPs, and the maintenance would have been hundreds of millions per annum less than it would have cost to maintain the OPPs. And those vessels, 2 of those 6, would have gone to Tobago, and that's where Tobago should have been secured for the last 8 years. But because of political pettiness, they refused to use those diamond vessels. 8 years later, you now come in a budget allocation to claim that you are now going to refurbish these vessels to have them utilized. So, I mean, everything that they said, their 8 points was all a regurgitation of things that would have been established as a minister in 2013 and 2015, and as Commissioner of Police in 2018 and 2021. They pulled the plug, they dismantled it, and now they're trying to reignite. But to reignite because of the maintenance cost, because of all of these things not being utilized for years, because of either incompetence or political pettiness, those things to refurbish is not in the budget allocation. So what it is basically, it's a shopping list, wishful thinking, and we are not going to actually see proper productivity in it.
All right, Mr. Griffith, you have mentioned some of the challenges that you faced, even in your seat as Commissioner of Police. And now with the proposed increased budget, what are some of the recommendations, some of the things outside of the things that you implemented during your tenure? What are some of the recommendations you would put forward to assist in curbing the surge in crime in our country?
Well, definitely. Let's focus on Tobago. The things that I would have put in Tobago as the Minister of National Security, bringing the National Operations Center, the concept of proper radar system, reigniting the Marine unit in the police service, putting Coast Guard vessels into Tobago. Those are the things that I would have seen and would have seen as important, because I always stated as a minister and as a Commissioner of Police, a safer Tobago means a safer Trinidad. Because if at any time crime increases in Tobago, you have to extract more resources from Trinidad to take to Tobago, and then by doing that, now it will weaken the security resources and the law enforcement in Trinidad. So it's a lose-lose situation. Nothing has been done to protect Tobago, to prevent it from criminal elements entering Tobago. It's the most simple thing. We have it's atrocious that you will see someone going to Tobago. You come out of the car, you could probably, if you're going on the boat, you have to walk through the scanner to make sure that you don't have anything. But your cars are going onto the boat and it's not being checked. And that is where we should be doing. Weapons, drugs, anything could be entering these on these vessels through vehicles. You're not checking the vehicles, but in a cosmetic way, you're asking people to walk through a walk-through scanner. That serves no purpose. What should be happening is, as I said as commissioner and as minister, which I have prepared, is that you need to put a proper K9 unit, sniff and search and every single vehicle that goes onto that port to get into Tobago. It must be checked properly, thoroughly, to ensure no drugs, no weapons enter. Tobago can be relatively safe. It is not difficult. And by doing that, having a marine unit to make sure that other vessels that leave Trinidad to get to Tobago can be monitored, a Coast Guard system, putting up a proper system for radar, a National Operations Center, having a system. I also had prepared a proper 999 system solely for Tobago. What happens now is anyone in Tobago, you call 999, it is fed to Trinidad, and then from Trinidad, then goes back to a police station in Tobago. By that time, the crime has already been committed and they're gone. You need to have an isolated system that as soon as anyone in Tobago calls a specific 3-number call, it can immediately be fed to an operational command center in Tobago. And then you have the vehicles in Tobago, all GPS tracked, monitoring their area of responsibility to get an immediate response. That is what I would have liked to see in the budget allocation towards securing Tobago. Nothing of that has been done, and it shows incompetence on the part of the government or just trivializing the importance of securing Tobago.
All right, thank you very much there, former Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith. Got to leave it there for this morning. Getting your input in relation to the allocation to the T.T.P.S. and more importantly, the general happenings and operations of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So we want to say thank you very much again for joining us here on set this morning. And viewers, we want to remind you that this is your opportunity to share the live, share the live, share the live.